Oh, right, ladies and gentlemen. Per request of the people on YouTube, I'm going to do a little bit of talking about ATGANs and how to use them. Let's first make sure the AI is not being annoying, so let's disable the AI. Now, uh, as it goes in terms of ATGAN, let's turn off the fog of war. Let's give ourselves some infinite resources. Now, there's a couple ATGANs in the game, of course. You got a normal pack for the Soviets, got the Siskan, Global Commando, you have of course the Raketen, USF have the M1 57mm AT gun, and the Brits have the 6-pounder. And now for all AT guns are of course useful, they all have their strengths and weaknesses. So let's start with what I think are the strengths of certain AT guns. Of course, for the Pack 40, it has pretty good veterancy bonuses with improved rate of fire at Vet 2 and at Vet 3, and at Vet 1 it of course gives that target weak point, which can slow armor. So when a tank gets too close, it has some damage, and you manage to get that shot off, and then you might be able to cripple it and make sure you can kill it. For the Soviets, you got the main power is in the fact that this is a 6-man AT gun, so it's really hard to kill with indirect fire. It's often always at least 2 models staying alive. And you of course have that light artillery barrage, which even though it got nerfed, which was desperately needed, it can still be quite annoying, and it's probably still one of the best indirect fires early in the game to help out versus MGs and stuff. Now the Raketen has seen quite a couple overhauls in the past years. Now we got the 5-man version, which makes it live a little bit better, but it's still probably the AT that's yeah, the most killable. Very often the crew members clump up on the retreat, and they can often get shot down on the retreat. Strengths of this is of course that you can retreat it. You don't have to put it backwards like all the other AT guns, but you can just click the retreat button. Another strength of course is that you have 5 veterancies, and yeah, from Vet 1 you get that camouflage ability, so you can definitely strike something if you camouflage them, put them on hold fire, wait till the tank is quite close, and then you're almost always able to get at least 2 shots off. Then you of course have the M1 57mm AT gun for the USF, which has 2 very handy abilities. You know, for 30 munitions you got those sabot rounds, which are increased penetration. Very handy if you need to go up against tanks like the Tiger, or you just want to make sure you have that better chance of penetrating a medium. And if you get them to Vet 1, you can get the take aim. Let's just see, how do we give this one Vet 1 again? Selection. Oh, no, that was not it. Give me a second. I'm not so good with this mod. But let's see, here it is. Let's give it Vet 1. And you can see that they get that increased bit of range, so you might be able to get that killing shot off. Lasts for a couple seconds, 20 seconds, but you get limited sight. So this is only useful if you have another unit spotting whatever you want to fire at. And then the Brits AT gun is pretty good with veterancy as well. It gets really good rate of fire and penetration bonuses. And that one, it has that rapid maneuvers, which is free, and it gets a sprint. So you can, if you get barraged by some artillery, you can get it out quickly. but it doesn't offer that many bonuses compared to like the Sysgun and the M1 and the Packun. So it's not that good of an ability as the other Etigans have. Now, when it comes down to timings of an Etigan, if I'm going to look at the top tier 1v1 playstyle, you kind of have to figure out when is your opponent light vehicle coming, and do I have anything to kill it with, or do I need an Etigan? For instance, if you're playing Austria versus Soviets, if the Soviets go straight for their T-70, then you need your Etigan at about the 7-minute mark, because that's when the T-70 will come out. If you go for a 2-2 before that, you can like kite the T-70 a little bit. The 2-2 can do some damage, you can get a Faust in, so you can buy yourself some time. But it's quite handy to get an Etigan out to do some real damage and even be able to kill it, because T-70 takes 2 Etigan shots and the snare, or if you have a 2-2 and that gets a couple shots in, plus 2 shots from the Etigan, you can also kill the T-70. If you're talking about fighting the USF forces, and you're probably worried most about their light vehicles, which are either the A half track, or what you're going to see more often is the Stuart. I'm blind. Oh, it's actually in the tank department, which is the Stuart. Those will also come out about the 7 to 8 minute mark. And 2-2 can do some damage, especially on the rear. But you really need an Etigan to fight versus this as well. So Austria, I would say it's usually around the 7-minute mark that you need an Etigan. Versus Brits, you don't need an Etigan that often. Not a lot of Brit players go the AEC anymore. So versus Brits, I would usually hold off a little bit. If you have a 2-2 and you see the AEC, that's when you need the Etigan. But if there's no AEC, then you don't need it at the 7-minute mark, or like the AEC can come pretty early, like 5-6 minutes, if the game goes well for the Brits. In that case, you do need it a little bit early, but usually it's not the case. And you probably need to get your AT versus Brits around the 11-minute mark if they skip AEC, because they can get the Centaur or the Cromwell out between 11-12 minutes. So that's when you want at least one Etigan. This goes for all factions, that you expecting medium tanks between the 12 and 15-minute marks, depending a little bit on map control and whether or not they went for light vehicles. So I would always get at least an Etigan before the 10-minute mark. Etigans also have different other uses. For instance, the Sysgun is very handy for the light artillery barrage, but also if you're fighting Soviets or if you're fighting Brits, Etigans can be used to destroy heavy cover, which is yeah, going to help you in a lot of engagements. If we're looking at, for instance, allied playstyles, so we already talked a little bit about the Sysgun. It can help versus MGs, but if you're fighting Austria and the Austria player builds a 251 flame half track, then it's very important to get that Sysgun out early. So you want it between like the 5 and 6 minute mark and get the T70 later. If there's a 2-2 on the field, then you can go for the T70 first and get the Sysgun after that. If you're fighting the OKW player, Sysgun is kind of necessary versus a flag half track, but if you have like a little bit of soft AT on the field, like you got your snares, or you got your guard squad out, or penal squad with PTRSs, they can often kite away the flag half track a little bit as well. So you can get the T70 first and then get the Sysgun out. For the USF players, they often struggle getting their AT out early, because most USF players will opt for the captain path and go for the M20 or the Stuart or both. You can drop AT guns from the airborne commander, of course, but if you don't have a massive lead in map control, then it's often wise to, after you get your light vehicle out, you attack for the lieutenant and get an AT gun out to make sure you have it between the 12-15 minute mark. whenever the P4s of OKW and Ostia are going to arrive. For the Brits, I'm personally now a favor of getting an AT quite fast as Brits to kill the 2-2, which you often have to kill, or versus OKW to shoot at the flag half track, which will often be built. I'm not such a big fan of the AEC anymore, because if you skip the AEC, you can get a Sensor or a Cromwell out at about the 12-13 minute mark, which is pretty decent timing. Now, in terms of the later game, I think almost everyone has heard Sealor say it. What you do is you get 2 AT guns out to fight all the medium and heavy tanks. So 2 AT guns is kind of key. Let's get another packer now. And now there's 2 ways in which you can play AT guns. There's a kind of safe way, and there's the more killing way. So you can put your AT guns basically at the same spot. That's one way to do it. The advantages of this are, whenever there's an enemy tank, let's set it up a little bit. Yeah. Let's give these to the enemy.
Enemy forces are securing our territory.
So whenever there is an enemy tank and it goes a little bit too far, usually you don't go backwards, you get 2 AT guns firing, and very often there's no way of getting out again in time. Yeah? So an AT gun, when a tank goes in, an AT gun will usually get 2 shots off. So if you have your 2 AT guns next to each other, there's a big chance that you will be able to kill the tank. What's important with this is that you have something in front of the AT guns to be able to spot the tank in time, so you get those 2 shots off, and maybe a snare platform to save your tanks as well. Because the weakness of having 2 AT guns at the same spot is that a tank can often can run up quite close to them and then go and kill them from the front. And when you try to fight the tank, and it will probably just pick you off or just drive circles around you. In a situation like this, is what you want to do is you want to get that 1 shot in and then get the snare going as well. And you want to put your AT guns as fast as possible from one side and the other to the other side, so you get distance between at least 1 AT gun at the tank, so you are able to start firing. So that's like one danger of having both AT guns at the same spot, is that someone can dive upon it. Another danger, of course, is quite vulnerable to... let's see. Where's that vehicle? Yes. Of course, quite vulnerable to rocket artillery. I have 2 AT guns next to each other, they can both be hit by the same volley, and especially Katyushas are pretty good at it. I've already managed to push a 4 shot, and they're able to kill him. So another way of playing AT guns is, of course, something that I do a lot more. It's more of a safe way, is that you have them apart. So you don't have them on the same spot, you have them in 2 different places. So if a tank tries to get in on top of this AT gun, you still have another pack gun able to fire. Now the weakness of this is, of course, is that you don't have enough killing power to kill a tank quite often. So when a tank drives up, what we did earlier, and you have 2 AT guns volleying, both get that 2 shots off, both penetrate, and you have basically any medium dead. If you only have 1 AT gun there, it can't kill a tank, because you probably don't have enough shots. The tank will always be able to get away. But I'm more of a fan of this way, because you can keep your AT guns alive a lot better. which is also important for the veterancy bonuses, which are quite strong. And especially if you have a medium tank out yourself, you can use that medium tank to try and finish the tanks off. And you have a spread of your AT-guns. So that's basically a little bit about how the two ways to use AT-guns. So you either put them on the same spot and really try to kill something, which also makes them vulnerable, or you play it more safely and put them apart. And that means you won't be able to kill enemy tanks as much. You need your own tank to kill the tanks, then you probably won't kill it with the backup. If you want to be aggressive with your pack-guns, it's always nice to have something scouting for them, because they don't have a lot of range. So you can often move them to a certain spot. If you know where your half-health tank of the enemy is preparing, for instance, I know it's here, I can like plop some recon in the sky, or can push out an infantry unit forwards, then try and move up my AT-guns. Very often people don't expect you to attack with the AT-guns that deep, and it can often lead to you killing an enemy tank. So this is my little bit about AT-guns. You also of course have for OKW and for Ostia, you got the packs, big boys, the pack 43s. 99 out of 100 times they're useless, especially if you play like the bigger game modes. There's just too much artillery on the field. They'll basically always just die. So they're not really worth an investment. In 1v1 they sometimes can work, but it's a little bit of a gimmick, not really a solid strategy. Soviets of course has also in certain commanders the M42s. M42s have a nice anti-tank and ambush, have okayish AP, okayish veterancy bonuses. They can deal with light vehicles. They don't really have a lot of killing power, but they're more like a deterrent that someone doesn't overstep. If you have two of them, they can also be a bit of use versus mediums, like the Ostia P4, the Ostwinds. But if you were talking about a P4 with VET2 or the OKW P4, they already start having quite a bit of trouble doing penetrations and damaging, so they're not really a good thing to take into the late game. But they definitely can keep you alive up to the minute of like 16, 17, but then you really need some better anti-tank capabilities than just the M42 45mm. But they can be used in certain strategies where you play the tier 1 for Soviets, where you go penals and you can back it up with a couple of these. So you always want like 2 of these. So that's basically my talk about the AT-guns. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, put a comment in the YouTube comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you want to learn about a certain aspect of the game, if you've got an idea for a next video, let me know in the comments as well. See you boys next time. Bye bye.